Hey y'all, it's Dr. Shelley and welcome to Sunday Dinner Conversations. And I am so glad that y'all are here to have dinner with me tonight. So today we're going to be talking about self-love because self-love is one of the parts of personal leadership, which we know is important as we think about how we lead our families. We've got to love ourselves. How you going to love somebody else and you don't love you? And let me tell you, don't nobody loves Dr. Shelley like Dr. Shelley loved Dr. Shelley, okay? But recently in Psychology Today, I was reading, and it said that roughly 85% of people worldwide suffer from low self-esteem, which is a facet or a product of lack of self-love. Can you imagine that? So today we're going to talk about what it is that you can do, even as those busy moms, whether you are a mom in the corporate world or you're a stay-at-home mom who is really running things at home. We want to get your views and your perspective and share some knowledge about self-love today with our guest, Christy Granis. She's a mom of 10. But at one point, she was the corporate guru. And so now she's taken those skills and applied them to raising her family and still takes time to love on herself. When we come back from this commercial break, we're going to bring in Miss Christy Granis, who's going to tell us a little bit more about her journey to making self-love a priority for her. We'll be back in a moment.
Make me crazy. Never got your name, but you got me begging. All I know about you like to pick and choose. Make it all about you. Go take it all if you want. Taking the chance, stuck in my head, not gonna leave it at that. Taking the lead, feeling your heat. Just wanna give you my best. I don't even know your name, but you got me. 'Cause you're old to die. We don't know what happens next, but you got me. 'Cause I'm next in line. You make it look so easy, making me feel so dreamy. Never wanna pay for drinks, but you got me. 'Cause you're all that. Got me locked in now. Go ahead and take a shot. Do you really want me? Maybe you're just...
Hey, y'all, welcome back. And we're here today to talk about personal leadership, which is one of the most important parts of our ability to lead our families. And within that, how do we love ourselves? BetterUp.com describes self-love as important because it motivates much of our positive behavior while reducing harmful behavior. What? It empowers us to take risks and to say no to things that do not work for us. It's a key component of building self-compassion. Self-love takes care of ourselves, lowers stress, and allows us to strive for success. And that is what we are trying to do. We are trying to be successful at school, at work, and at home. And one woman who embodies all of that, and from the moment I met her, I was like, okay, this is a different kind of somebody. And I love her for it. She is one of my good friends, and she's a master's degree level corporate executive, and she has actually made the choice to be now a corporate mom of 10. Welcome to the show, Miss Christy Granis.
Thank you very, very much. Happy to be here.
So glad you're here. So glad you're here. So, you know what? Tell us a little bit about, the journey that you've been on going from, like corporate warrior, like super duper, doing all the things, right? To now being a corporate mom, running a household of 10 and still finding time for yourself. So tell me a little bit about that journey.
Wow, that's a big question. So my first job out of college, I was a grant writer, fundraising for mission projects all over the world. And I spoke with congregations, I spoke with women's groups, I spoke to everybody about all of the things. We had mission projects happening in 92 countries around the world. And I communicated with missionaries and leaders all over the world in order to get a grasp on the mission projects and to be able to present them well and kind of to break them down into bite-sized components so that they would be more understandable and accessible to the average person. I did that for 5 years. And during that time, I had 3 babies. That was another challenge all by itself. Just taking my average schedule and then putting in daycare and grocery shopping and making sure that we had the diaper bag packed, which is a whole different beast all by itself. And all of the things. At the end of those 5 years, I corporation was restructured. So then I had about 2 years as a stay-at-home mom, and I had to redefine my identity, who I was, what made me kind of worthwhile. And once I got into that groove, I was called back into being a full-time worker, this time at a church. So I was working half for the church and half for a daycare, which was attached, by being the summer camp director. And what that meant was that I essentially felt like I should be working full-time at both jobs in order to fulfill what I thought were the requirements that were, or the expectations being asked of me.
And who was
So during
asking these
that time, I
expectations of
had
you? I mean, just like who was asking these
mostly me,
expectations? And where they
honestly,
come from?
mostly me.
That part.
Yeah, so some of it was some of the other daycare staff saw me working a portion of the time that they were and decided that I wasn't working enough. I heard rumblings and I decided, oh, I better step it up. And some of the church congregation members felt like I should be doing more. And I said, oh, I should be stepping it up. So instead of addressing the reality of what I was working, I decided to live up to external expectations that weren't really there by others. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes, I do. And I'm sure many of our viewers and listeners do. I mean, how many times do we now shift or maneuver ourselves in ways that are not healthy for us to
Right.
meet some kind of corporate goal at the expense of our families? Because I'm sure now that you're doing more, it now is taking its toll on your family.
It was at the expense of my family and at the expense of myself, because I would oftentimes just not sleep because I'd be getting home from a meeting at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, putting my kids in bed at that time, and then staying up to fold the 3 loads of laundry that hadn't yet been folded. So it was taking
that
care of
whole
all of
part,
those
girl.
things.
Because no
Yeah,
matter
I mean,
where you
laundry
are, whether you are in the corporate world or at home, the laundry's gonna need to get done, and somebody's got to do it, right?
somebody's got to do it. Exactly. So there was one congregation member who I love to this day, and he said, I would never want your job. And I said, tell me more. And he goes, I come by that, like I just drive past the church on my way home, and your car is always in the parking lot, always.
Right.
So I don't know what you're doing, but you need to do it differently because you need to go home. And that comment really struck me and made me realize, okay, there are people that are seeing what I'm doing, seeing my commitment, and all these other people, they don't see it, but that's not my problem. So I started to shift my priorities. Just like an off comment by somebody who cared was enough to help me shift my priorities back to where they should have been in the first place, which was my family. Making sure that I wasn't there to just hustle them along to the next thing, but that I was there to be with them and to communicate with them and to really know them, because I didn't.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, with Michael being a pastor, how did that and being in that whole Lutheran world impact your ability to make that decision to go from, okay, you know what, yes, I may be a master's degree level professional, but I'm now going to decide to be a true stay-at-home mom, and that is my profession. That is a profession, and now let's advocate for it, but we won't go there yet. But how did his profession weigh on that?
So when we moved here, I was the only one with a job. And we moved here so that I could take this job. And while we were here, he was doing something called pulpit supply, which was he would go to a different congregation every weekend to preach. And what that meant was that I was then going to my congregation that was employing me with all of my children and no childcare. So I was doing children's messages. I was leading children's church. I was helping out with the youth group and basically putting my kids in a classroom and saying, don't need me for 2 hours. And that wasn't fair to them. When Michael was able to find more of a longer term temporary position, sometimes the kids would go with him. And then he would come back and say, it's really hard for me to do that. I'm like, it's hard for me to do that too. We're both full-time church work professionals with no help on Sunday mornings. That doesn't work.
That part.
And then he received a call, which basically is like an offer of full-time employment on a covenant basis, not a contract basis, but like you are ours, we are yours, we are going to be together in this. So he received a call. I also had a call. And so we would be at two different churches, half an hour apart on Sunday mornings with two very different priorities and no childcare yet. And that didn't seem like a smart choice. It would be essentially ripping our family apart every Sunday. So we could not worship together. We could not go to events together. We couldn't do anything together. And at that point, it's do I try and stick with my career, or do I prioritize family, togetherness, and being as one in a community of believers? And that's what it was. That's what it came down to.
Wow. I love that. I love that. And you know, the way God works, you know, that we know he's going to show us if we can just follow his path. And,
Exactly.
you know, it's just kind of like it took a few things for you to see that this is where I need to be. This needs to be the priority. And I know based on Art and I's journey with that, it was actually him that decided to stay home as opposed to me. But it was definitely a challenge. So tell me real quick, what's like in phases, what's a typical day like as you raise a family of 10?
Well, you know, strangely enough, our kids let us sleep in. Our older ones often let us sleep in. The younger ones are awake before the birds. I'm sure that they greet the birds as they wake up. But the younger ones tend to go downstairs and play. They'll wake up an older kid and they'll say, hey, I'm hungry. Can you feed me? And the kids will make pancakes or waffles or oatmeal or eggs or whatever. And we'll usually wake up around 8:30. The older kids have online school through a school called Wittenberg Academy based out of Minnesota. So the older ones will get online and do their homework. We will make sure that they're actually doing their homework, just, you know, accountability in there. And then I will take the younger ones and I will go through different alphabet cards. We'll do writing, we will do counting, we'll do colors, we'll do shapes. And every day is somewhat similar, but different enough that they don't get bored. We try and get outside every day. That doesn't always happen. And partially it's because my twins, who are 4 years old, really enjoy being clothing optional. So they try and hide their clothes. Yeah. They hide their clothes so that they don't have to wear them.
Wow.
But as much as we like to get outside. Yep.
And then it's supper time.
Yep. And we do chores together too. So everybody cleans up, everybody knows where things go. Sometimes there's more buy-in than other times. But we like to have the house not be a complete shambles at the end of every day. Yep.
Wow. That is like a huge commitment. I just know. And I only have 8 kids. And I think, you know, I mean, it's 6 at home most of the time. But wow. Like and to see your house operate like a well-oiled machine. When we come back from commercial break, we're going to talk about how you apply some of the knowledge and skills that you had kind of perfected in corporate America. And you brought those home and apply them in your own home. Because a leader in the corporate place and a leadership in the home, they're very similar professions and they're very similar skills that are needed to do both. So when we come back on Sunday Dinner Conversations on the 5S to Love Network, we're going to find out more with Christy Granis. See you in a moment.
I need it all. Do you want it though? Where do I begin? I see the hate, they don't wanna see me win. Bank deposits, I got more coming in. Top down, throw the money in the wind. I don't want it all. Heard he scammer, had to switch up the accounts. Moving paper, gotta call in my account. It's all in, I can have it coming out. Been through the struggle, I can see another drought. Yeah, it's not a purse, it's a merch. 6 figures was a goal, now it's 9 or a hearse. Put it work. Used to pull up, now swerve. No time for the snakes, trying to put them in the dirt. That's word. I gotta get it, it's in my DNA. You only see the highlights, don't know what it takes. Last year stressing, got no sleep. Now I'm right between the courts, out of nosebleed. I see the hate, they don't wanna see me win. Bank deposits, I got more coming in. Top down, throw the money in the wind. I don't want it all. Heard he scammer, had to switch up the accounts. Moving paper, gotta call in my account. It's all in, I can have it coming out. And through the struggle, I can see another drought. Yeah.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Sunday Dinner Conversations with Christy Granis. And I'm just, again, when we think about having, and the work that you've done to shift from being a corporate mom to now a stay-at-home mom, can you share with me a little bit about, who is all in the family? Because we want to know who they are. And how do you apply some of your corporate education and corporate skills to now being the leader of your family and raising your family?
Okay, I'm going to take those questions in reverse because otherwise I might forget. One of the things that I found invaluable when I was working in the office or at the church or at the summer camp was structure and just kind of strategies. So one of the things that we do is we have a lot of children. So we have teams. So one team is responsible for, say, the dishes and cleaning our upstairs family room and cleaning the upstairs restroom and taking the trash and recycling out. And the other team is responsible for cleaning the counters, islands, floor in our downstairs area, and also cleaning the restroom there and a few other minor things. So we split them up into teams and we switch every month. We used to switch every week, but that became a little bit confusing because once they got into a routine, they wanted to stick with that routine because they found something that worked for them. And so now we switch every month. And that way I can say, hey, who's responsible for the dishes? And they all know and they get on it. Generally. But also, yeah. And also every bedroom has their own laundry basket that they are responsible for because I'm not doing laundry for 12 people, including bedding and towels. They are responsible for their own clothing because they're old enough and we've trained them. We've taught them how to do it. So I don't do their laundry. They do their laundry. It goes into the washer, into the dryer, into their laundry basket, into their room where they are responsible for folding and putting it away. I have my
what I heard is a lot of, you have them broken up into teams, much like we do in the corporate sector where we have multiple teams working on different activities or different assignments. You pair them up in a way where they can get along best together because we know that oftentimes it's not just one way, or one person can always work with another person, and so we have to be
Personality.
really
Yep.
thoughtful about the personalities with those teams, right?
Yep.
I mean, I even heard about accountability and expectations. So you set out what it is you expect of them, and then they have to be accountable for it. And so, a lot
Exactly.
of those same skills that we have to monitor or bring into our teams at work, we also have to do right there at home. I love it.
Yep. And the other thing is if they want to do something out of the ordinary, just really fun, I have no problem. I think that's awesome. I think it's really creative of them to just have all of these cool ideas. And they know that they cannot do it until their chores are finished. So they say,
Mm.
"Hey mom, we really want to go roller skating at this time at this place. It's going to, we have to leave in 20 minutes. Are the dishes done?"
Mm.
And then they go, because it's when you set an expectation um, of what has to be done beforehand and you stick with it, they know what they have to do in order to get the fun that they would really, really like to get to.
Got you. So I mean, there's even a reward system when you think
Absolutely.
about it, and and of course there are consequences and
Mhm.
acknowledgments, all of which we know are part of raising a family as well as that corporate mindset. And so I mean, it seems like you took a lot of what you knew and you just brought it home and operationalized it right there.
Absolutely.
You
100%.
put all your degrees to work. And so within that, how do you still find time for yourself? Because now we already talked about how it was difficult to find time for yourself and you were losing yourself in many senses before. How do you find those moments of self-care, and what do you do in those moments?
So I have to give my husband so much credit because he regularly says, "You need to just go and do something by yourself. I want you to be happy. What can we do to get you some alone time so that you can do what you would like?" And so really it's kind of a team effort. And the kids also, um, you know, my some of my older ones, they have soccer or they have swimming or they have dance or they have whatever they do. And they're like, "Mom, we have this. What do you have?" And so it really is like we're all on the same page. We generally we really do want to support each other. And so the first few
So what
times
I'm
that
hearing
happened,
is you make self-care important for everybody in your family.
exactly, exactly.
Self-care, and
Um,
so it becomes something that you all look out for within each other, is making sure you're
we try
taking
to.
care of yourselves.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so the first few times that I had time by myself, my husband, he's like, "Just go and do something that you would like to do." And I was stumped because I had been giving so much of myself and everything kind of revolved around the family that I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I came up with three different questions for myself that I think might be helpful for viewers as well. And the first question is, what do I want to learn?
That
Is there
part.
something out there that's just kind of always been on my list, but I haven't done anything with because I didn't have time? And so I came up with things like soap making. I've always wanted to make soap, but I didn't know how to make it. So I started to figure it out. Another one was foraging, which is a little strange, but I like to go on walks. And I'm like, "Oh, I wonder if I can eat this." Something
Wait a
just
minute.
popped in
So
my
you
head.
got a hobby? Is that like you really did go get a hobby to go out and find different plants and figure out whether or not you could eat them?
Uh-huh.
Oh, oh my
I
goodness.
decided it's a hobby. So, I go with it.
And
So the
that's
first
not
one
something
is,
you'll figure out when you're like at home and still worried about dinner, right? So I mean, that
no, no, no.
whatever floats, right?
It's, I'm not going to go in my yard and be like, "Oh, dandelion greens. I guess we're having a salad tonight."
Right?
But just like, "Oh, I wonder what this plant is and is it useful and can I eat it?" You know, Something fun
Mhm.
for me.
Yeah,
So the first one is, what do I want to learn? And the second
right.
one is, what do I like to do for fun? And
That part.
I love to paint. I forgot that I love to paint until my daughters were like, hey, Mom, can I paint something? Yeah. And so they kind of reminded me of what I liked to do when I was younger. And that was really cool. I also like kayaking and reading and cooking and writing, but I'd forgotten. So I had to sit down and make a list so that when I did have time, I could actually look at it and say, oh my goodness, I can do this. And the third thing, so what do I want to learn?
I don't know if you can hear me, but like, I love that part that you just said. I just want to marinate on that point of making a list. How many times do we not make we make list of everything else? Like, you make grocery list, we make, list of to-dos, right? We can, make a list of all kinds of things. Have we ever just sat down and journaled, what do I like to do? Like, what brings me joy? And then, like, now let me find, and that may inspire us more to want to do those things. It's like, now we can go painting and we can sit and paint, but we won't go there. Go ahead. I'm sorry, girl. I get excited when good nuggets.
No, it's exactly why I wrote it down, because when I had time, I couldn't remember anything. And when I didn't have time, I remembered all the things that I wanted to do. Of course, my brain wouldn't get those things at the same time or at the appropriate time. But yeah, I made a list because otherwise I just forgot. So the first one was, what do I want to learn? And the second one was, what do I like to do for fun? And the third one was, how do I feel fulfilled? Because sometimes, the thing that you do for fun doesn't necessarily fill up your bucket. But I love to volunteer. I love to teach. I love to mentor. I love to event helper. So all of those things, like, when I'm serving others, that's when I feel joy. That's when I feel purpose. And so if I'm doing everything else well, but I'm not finding a way to serve, I'm not quite me. And that was also important for me to sit down and realize.
I love that. I love that. And and those three questions, and answering those maybe in your, evening journaling, or if you do morning coffee time, like, at some point you have to find a time in the day that is just for you. I personally enjoy journaling. And believe it or not, I like to, like, kind of watch and listen to the news. That's just, something that I like to do in the morning. But during those times, it helps me think about, what do I love? What do I enjoy doing? What have I always wanted to do? And then what makes me feel fulfilled? Like, that's a great roadmap for folks, to consider. And that is, and when we think about it, this is great for people, not just if you're, a stay-at-home mom, even if you are that corporate mom. How are you, making sure that you're taking care of yourself and taking time to decide and figure out what you like, right?
Exactly.
Because oftentimes
we all know the grind, and it grinds you down. But what makes you feel alive?
It does. It does. And so when we come back from commercial break, we're going to, kind of find out what advice you would have for other moms and other folks out there that really want to prioritize self-love. Because seeing you, we can no longer give the excuse that I'm too busy, or I don't have enough time, or I have too much going on. Nobody has more going on than a pastor's wife with 10 kids. And, especially after COVID season, and kind of watching how that all came about, right? And so when we come back, what advice would you have for others? And then, what advice or ways do you have to, or what do you have to put in your life to make sure you can make yourself a priority, right? When we get back on Sunday Dinner Conversations here on the 5S to Love Network.
My business. My business. My business. My flippin'. My business. My business. My business. My business. My flippin'. My business. My flippin'. My business. My flippin'. My business. My flippin'. My
never like, 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 never like. Broken future, all the plans you made in your heart grew just to die.
Welcome back, y'all, to Sunday Dinner Conversations. And we're here with my friend and mom of 10, Christy Granis. And before we get into the advice, I know you have a lot and people are going to want to know what you have to advise them of, because you really do have this down. What challenges are you still working through so that you don't lose yourself as you've just had another baby? You just gave birth to your 10th child, what was last week?
Last week, yep.
So what challenges are you
8
still
days old,
working?
10 days old.
Right.
Well, physically, I'm still healing, but the challenges that I have is just family. We have no family in the area, and that can be a little challenging for me because I don't like to ask for help. I like to give help, but not ask for it. And so the challenge is for me to recognize my temporary limitations and work within them and really ask for help. And that's hard for somebody who was raised to never need anything and to just always offer help.
Exactly. And that's also part of personal leadership and loving yourself, is knowing your limitations. It's not just about all the things that we necessarily do well and we love to do. It's also recognizing these are some things that I want to work on within myself, and these are some different ways that I want to work on them. And I know that part of what even spurred our friendship was my need. I mean, we didn't have family here. And, during COVID, our families were able to come together because, with me, with all 6 of my kids, well, 5, I had 5 at the time, right? I got to remember, right?
Yep,
I had 5 kids back then. We both reproduced again since then. Go figure, right? And our families were the only 2 that would come together during COVID because we didn't want to be around a whole bunch of people, but we knew we were okay being around each other. And what that was part of me working on me and being open to other folks and open to getting help. And we kind of worked through that together. Like, all right, I'm going to have to ask for help. I'm going to have to, like, having all these kids in the house by myself, I can't just do that alone. And, finding friends that can help you and you can be transparent with is also part of that. Saying, hey, I struggle to ask for help. But we were in a situation where it was like, the kids are driving each other nuts. Like, I need help. And the men can't solve this one. Right. And so do you think, amidst all of that, do you ever think you'll return to the workforce?
I'm not opposed to it. I'm open to honestly whatever. So I stopped planning because my plans didn't really work anyway. And so I just pray that God will lead me where he needs me to be. And so far that prayer has been answered abundantly every single time. Yeah.
Oh, yep. So beautiful. And what advice would you give other women who are thinking about making that decision? Because there are a lot of folks out there right now that after COVID, family is like the number one thing for folks. They're realizing that this is a very important thing for me. I need to make sure I get this right. There's a lot of ideologies and things out there that I want to be responsible for. And for a lot of folks, it's trading, two parents going out and trading the lifestyle for what kind of life, do we want to have. And so what advice would you give to some folks that are kind of coming to some of those realizations and realizing I may need to be at home and with my kids to support them, and I may need a career that may not require the same things of me, but they may be fearful or trying to overcome that? What would you say to them?
One of the things that I would say is sit down with your finances and go through stuff, because financially, for me to continue working and for my husband to be working, it didn't make sense. I wasn't bringing in enough to cover all of the deficits that we would be giving our kids. You can't really monetize time with your family, but the money that you're making doesn't make up for all of the things that you would be missing. So finances would be a big thing. Another one is boundaries. Recognize what your challenges are and what your opportunities are. And don't just go like to the edge of your abilities, but instead pull that back a little bit, because you don't want to be driven to the edge of your abilities every day. You want to have something left in the tank for those circumstances where stuff just happens. Maybe a tire blows, maybe a kid gets sick, maybe you get sick, and you don't want to have to go past your abilities because you've already set your boundary out a little bit too far. Another one is figure out what your priorities are. Do you want to, is it your family? Is it your career? Is it something in the middle? And once you realize what your priorities are, make your life fit that. There's no silver bullet. There's no magic that happens. It's a lot of hard work. Do the work and make your life fit what you want it to look like.
Absolutely.
That's all I've got.
Yeah, because I gotta take care of why I'm coughing. We're going to come back with from a commercial break in a few moments.
What's up with it? Do it cause I love it and I stuck with it. We ain't with the subbing in the cut with it. Please none of the talks, I heard enough of it. Like, what you gonna do? Where you at? Who you with? You ain't really about this, don't talk about it. Really on the move, on the map, never slip. Keep your hands to your lips, don't talk about it. Real eyes, real lies all the time. Stand on it, if we said it, we don't walk around it. Loose lips, ain't shifts, red cup, blue strips, new phone, who this? No, we don't allow it. Really on go, I don't know what's an off day. Now we on road, came from smoking in the hallway. Now we got shows, boys feeling like Broadway. Always look both ways, even on a crossway. Driving down Cross Bay, out town Barclays. Really on big things, came up a small way. Championship rings, baby, that's a ball game. Oh, she want a little bag, baby, that's small change. Yeah, that money talk. If we ain't cool, then cut me off. No breaking news, don't run your mouth. Thought it was the plug, now he running off. Thought it was a plug, now he running off.
Get it that I'm never going back. Get it that I'm never going back. I get to it first, I got you mad. I guess that when I get to it last. Get it that I'm never going back. Get it that I'm never going back. Going up, going up, going up, going up, going up, going up. Get it that I'm never going up, going up.
welcome back to Sunday Dinner Conversations, y'all. And thank you so much for being here with myself and my amazing guest, Christy Granis. Last question for Christy before we kind of close this out is, what would you tell younger you about just life? What advice would you have for the younger version of Christy?
It'll be an adventure and hold on for the ride. All of the things that I thought I was going to do, I mean, I've done some of them, but it's different and better than I thought it was going to be. Yeah. Probably it.
That's awesome, and I would also always think about like trusting God through the process, because
100%.
so many times we want to question and it's like, what, just trust. You know what to do. And so I do want to thank you so much for coming on today. Go ahead.
One more thing. And it's something that I learned later than I should have. And it's just to assume goodwill. So, sorry. For me, it was real easy to feel judged when there was no judgment coming my way. Or it was real easy to be criticized when it wasn't actually a criticism. But just to assume goodwill on the other person's part. And that way my response would help encourage conversation instead of making myself feel worse than I needed to. Does that make sense?
It does. And just to, kind of extend that a bit further, what would you tell women who are considering making this kind of change from being a stay-at-home mom to being this corporate woman, or vice versa? Some women might be going from the corporate field to being a stay-at-home mom. Others may be saying, I'm thinking about re-entering the workforce. What would you say to them?
Believe in yourself. You are capable of more than you know. And there was another study, I can't remember who did it, but there was another study that said that in particular women, when they meet new people, they assume that people like them less than they actually do. Wow. People like you more than you realize. People like you more than you know. Go with it. Go with it. You are capable. You are strong. You are smart. You are able, and you can do it.
So powerful. Such a great way to kind of round all of this out. And I just want to thank you again for coming on the show, and even more so for being my friend, because we couldn't be in many instances be more opposite, but and you opened my eyes to so many different things. And I will tell y'all, Christy is one of my go-to women to go to when we talk about race and we talk about issues, because her husband is biracial. We're going to get to that next week, and all that brings into the situation, right? But you help to open up eyes just by being who you are, and nothing is more encompassing of you as what you just advised. It's just, be yourself, and people like you more than you think they do. Like, imagine if we all just walked around knowing that people like us more than we think you do. And I would even add to take that further, some people like you more than you like yourself. Some people will be brought into your life just to help you love yourself more. And as we think about how we're going to be able to move forward together, I want to come back in a moment with, a few tips and strategies for folks to think about as they consider how to lead their families together, but also a little tidbit on family leadership, which I know you helped me kind of turn around and create, if you will. And so I wanted to, just give our audience a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of, us working together to move forward with Family Legacy 5. So we'll do that right after this commercial break.
Look at me, I'm on. 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 Can't stop, keep going. Can't stop, keep going. Can't stop, keep going. Can't stop, keep going. Yeah. Okay. Hold up. Yeah. I'm chasing the bag, I'm racing the clock. Look at them block, watching them flop. Used to see this on my sleep when I ain't had shit but my thoughts in the car. I really was lost. Now I'm public with the soundscapes. Niggas floss, I'm really pulling strings for the pound cake.
I see you went for a puppet in the clown face for a little wage. That shit, the talk of the town is late. Still me, I never switch sides. Came a long way with the gas tank running.
Hey y'all, welcome back. And you've just heard from the corporate woman, corporate CEO turned corporate mom, Christy Grannis, who just gave us a peek into what life is like as a mom of 10, running a household, much like we all have run our businesses because a family is a business. And one of the things about Christy that I absolutely love is her idea, her ability. You can bring her any idea, as crazy as it seems. She is the one friend I can go to and be like, okay, I was thinking about like piercing and then fill in the blank. And she wouldn't even think you're crazy. She'd be like, okay, let's think through that together or something like that, where anything you bring to her, she's going to be very welcoming of. And that, for me, I can say thank you to that, because that helps me with my self-love. It helps me with my personal leadership to know I have friends that I can go to that aren't necessarily going to judge. But one of the crazy ideas I brought to her a few years ago was, I've been thinking about this whole concept of family leadership. And immediately she was like, yes. And if you know her, like that's it. And she's like, say more. And I just started kind of talking through this idea of, we have all of these leadership characteristics and traits that we learn in corporate America, and how can we officially help people bring these home? Like, we've both done it in the sense of just naturally being who we are, but how can more folks who are great leaders in the workplace or great leaders out in the community also be great leaders right there in the comforts of your own home? And sometimes that's the hardest place. It's also something
Yeah.
that we talked about. There's no roadmap or vision for that. And so one of the when we were talking about this, there were 5 pillars that I was pitching to her and to see what she thought. And the first one we talked about was personal leadership. And we just talked about the idea of, you can't lead others if you can't lead yourself. And so I was going to ask you, like, when we think about personal leadership and self love, how do those go together for you?
I think one of the things that is hard about personal leadership is that there's so much negative self-talk, right? Like, let's say that my 12-year-old, who's a girl, wants to learn how to change a tire.
Okay.
There's going to be a lot of people that say, why would you need to change a tire? You can just go to the tire shop down the road, or your dad can do it, or your brothers can do it. Why would you need to do that? Like, that's not a thing that you should really learn to do. And so there's either negative self-talk or negative talk that you hear from other people, like, why? But I think that we should be hearing, why not? And go ahead and learn it. I think that whatever skill we want to have, do it. If you can dream it, just do it.
Just
and I
make
think
it happen.
Yeah. One of the things with personal leadership is giving yourself the permission to dream, and giving yourself the permission to learn, and in some cases to become an expert.
Yes.
My oldest son is, he has autism. I'm not an expert on autism. I'm an expert on his autism. I know what he can safely do and safely not do in order to be the best version of himself. And Shelley, you've seen this, where if he has dairy, he becomes a different kind of himself. So I'm an expert on the areas that I have wanted to dive deep into. And that's okay. I can now say I'm an expert without feeling the need to put an asterisk after it and qualify it. You know,
That part.
I think giving yourself permission to dream, to learn, to do, and to say that you're good at something is huge. And I think that's probably the first step of personal leadership.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when I brought it to you, that was one of the first things that we talked about was how many folks and struggle with just loving themselves. Remember the statistic I brought to you earlier? 85% of people worldwide, y'all, struggle with loving themselves and having low self-esteem. And so when we think about what's happening in our families worldwide, it's like, how do people who don't love themselves raise people that love themselves, or even, really find the ability to love others? And so this personal leadership piece is a core part of family leadership. And oftentimes, and because another part of family leadership is the professional career leadership. That is part of what you need to learn to do in balance as a leader of your family. But it can't take over all of your areas. If there are 5 areas of personal and family leadership, and all of your attention is on one, and these 4 continue to get neglected, including that. So you're focused on your career, but you're forgetting about yourself. You're forgetting about having your money work for you. You're forgetting about really turning your house into a home, and you're forgetting about nurturing your relationships with people. That's all part of who you are, right? And so, how do you handle it when you feel like you're out of balance with yourself? Like, when and you can't get that time. Like, let's say it's one of those moments when it's dinner time, they did not follow the instructions that you wanted them to follow. Maybe they opened up something they weren't supposed to open. You're at 10, and whatever you do, you model is going to impact them. And it's also about how you're going to feel about yourself. How do you handle that and or what do you do in those moments to still get what you need, but you also need to give them what they need?
So I have a couple of answers. The first answer that I wish that I went to more often is I will step outside, because something about just being outside, being in nature, calms me, soothes me, gives me a minute, and I can take it, get rid of it, and go back in. The second one, which is probably more realistic, is that I lose my cool. I yell. I'm like, why didn't you? You know that you should. You know that this is your job, and we're not on the same team, and I need you on my team. Let's be a team. Come on.
That part.
The thing with that is that that gives me an opportunity later to sit down with them and say, okay, you did wrong. You get to apologize, and I will forgive you. And I did wrong. I lost my cool. I yelled at you. It's quite possible that I made you feel less than you are. And I'm sorry. And like a legit, I'm sorry. Like, I don't want to make people feel like that. And I know that I do sometimes. So I need to ask for forgiveness as much as I need to give it. So both of those things are true. I either excuse myself outside so that I can take a minute, or I lose my cool, and then we can come together for mutual forgiveness afterwards.
And the beautiful part is either way, your kids are seeing the healthy, kind of turnaround of the response, because we all are going to lose our cool, but how we handle it afterwards and build and nurture those relationships that may have been impacted by us losing our cool, because I know I never feel good when I lose my cool with my kids, right? And that's going to impact how I'm able to love myself and how effective I'm going to be in the mom role or the corporate role, because something happens with one of my babies, even though I still work outside the home, it affects me. It impacts how I think, whether it's on my mind and such. And so I love how you tied together that whole personal and relational leadership piece, and how you have to tie these things together. And so I just wanted, again, I want to thank you for being here. We are this time for real at the end of our show. And so I know our producer is doing some stuff in the background, and I love her for it. But I want to thank you for coming on, and just thank you for being my friend and being you. We will be back with you and your amazing husband next week. So that's going to be a lot of fun because,
Pretty
again,
wonderful.
he all right. He all right. I just will take it. But I want to thank you for coming on again, and we look forward to next week when we talk about self-love through the family structure. So both of you are going to really take this whole self-love, because it's such a core part of us being able to be effective family leaders, is how do we love ourselves, but then also how do we love one another as partners in a relationship, and getting each other what we really need, and that learning and growing with that over time. And so I want to thank you for that. And to y'all that are listening, thank you so much for showing up and showing out for us here at Sunday Dinner Conversations, and really thinking about what it is that you need to do for yourself to love on yourself. Remember that when you love yourself, you're going to get better sleep. You're going to have less anxiety. If you struggle with, not really being aware of yourself, people are always telling you kind of read the room, and you're not being able to pick things up around you, then you may be struggling with a little bit of self-love. If you want stronger determination, more motivation, higher self-esteem, more self-acceptance, and of overall better mental health, then focus on you and build your leadership so that you can lead others, right? We cannot lead when we are not fully whole ourselves, and we cannot move our families forward effectively towards the wealth and prosperity that we want to see them if we are still struggling with that. So be sure to join us next week for us to talk to Michael and Christy Grandis. And what I'd like you to do this week, y'all, I didn't see as many fit family videos as I wanted to see. So I still want you to put a video on of your family. Tell me about what you love about your family. And even at the end of that, I do also want to hear, what do you love about you? We've got to be able to share a little bit more of our self-love. And so we want to see those videos on the 5Fs to Love Network. Be sure to tune in every Sunday through Saturday from 8 to 9 p.m. on the 5Fs to Love Network. We are here to help you not only love each other better, but also love you. So if nobody told you they love you today, remember, Dr. Shelley loves you, and we'll see you right back here next week. Thank you.